Okay, I don't quite know what happened, but I'm going to continue part two. So the relationship that parents and children have. Let's not take advantage of that. Let's recognize that. Let's sanctify that. Let's work on the boundaries that we have, like that fence around the roof, etc. Let's work on that. The next idea that I want to bring out is the idea of the in this week's Torah portion we read about the wayward and rebellious son. So if a man will have a wayward and rebellious son who does not hearken to the voice of his father and the voice of his mother, and they discipline him, but he does not hearken to them, then his father and mother shall grasp him and take him out to the elders of the city and the gates of his place. They shall say to the elders of the city, the son of ours is wayward and rebellious. He does not hearken to our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. I'm going to stop there. These parents have this child, and in all of the commentators about this particular child, there is never a child like this in all of history. This doesn't occur. There is never a child, and the way this is interpreted is that it's the boy who is just bar mitzvahed. He's exactly 13, and it extends for a couple of months after his 13th birthday. He has to be somebody who has parents who look exactly the same, who talk exactly the same, who have exactly the same voice, etc., etc. There are so many conditions onto this particular scenario that it never happened. And yet we learn about it. Why are we learning about it? We're learning about it because we can learn lessons about it, even if it doesn't happen. Again, we get to the power and the importance of learning Torah, even if the actual scenarios don't ever happen. Right? So it apparently never happened that there was such a boy as this who, and it's almost like because of the things that he will do in the future, we have to sentence him to death today. Like it's a punishment of deterrence. Like he's going to do these things in the future. Therefore, this child who doesn't listen to the voice, the combined voice, it has to be the exact same voice of the parents, the mother and the father, the exact same voice. They're saying the exact same thing with complete clarity and with complete consistency. I don't know if that's ever true. But this child who hears that and he still rebels, and he still is a drunkard, and he's a glutton, which actually many people pull out as being somebody who's addicted to things. Like he's a child addict, and he can't hold himself, he can't control himself. He's like beyond reproach, and maybe some of us know people who have children who are addicts and how difficult that is to parent those children and what should be done to those children. But at the end of the day, what the Torah, what God is saying is, I don't judge people for what they will be one day. The premise here is that this child is so into himself and so egocentric. We get back to the concept of being egocentric and arrogant. So egocentric and so arrogant that he will in the future not listen to his parents, rob and steal and kill. Like he'll go off the deep end. And that sense of, I can't predict the future, that sense that punishment, to punish him now for something he is quote unquote going to do in the future, is not the way that we think about things, right? And again, we're month of Elul, we're in the month before Rosh Hashanah, where we really have to internalize the idea that we can all change. And as much as we've done things that we're embarrassed about, or that we don't want to have done, or that we wish we hadn't done, or we couldn't help ourselves to have done in the past, built into the universe is the capacity to start again, to be reformed, to do teshuvah, which is to return back to this pure holy soul that was born into us at the beginning of our lives in this world. We talked about that before, that our souls were consulted as to whether they wanted to be born or not, and the soul said, yes, I want to be born, because everything in this world can be used to bring out holiness and to elevate and to elevate and to elevate. Even the things that look to be negative right now to us look to be negative, they can be used for positive. And there's a really profound concept in Judaism that when we miss the mark, when we do a wrong thing, that when we truly work on ourselves to correct that, to analyze it, to take stock of it, to recognize it, to name it, to have remorse over it, to ask forgiveness from people we may have harmed, and then when we're put in the same situation again and we don't act on it, then we've truly reformed ourselves. We've truly gone from missing the mark to hitting the mark. We've taken an avera, something that's off, and we've lined it up, and it's become a mitzvah, and it's become a higher mitzvah almost. Like we've taken a crack and we filled it with gold. I love that analogy of us as a vessel, right? So we're a vessel. What are we a vessel for? We want to be a vessel for peace, and we want to be a vessel for goodness in the world, and compassion and love, and all these like really positive things. But we are flawed. We're human, and we have cracks. But can we take some of our cracks, and instead of filling them or leaving them wide open, we can fill them with gold? How do we do that? We do that with all the Yetzer Tov things we just talked about. We talked about how to fight the battle. Fight the battle. What did you say in the beginning? Fighting the battle was with prayer, with Shema, with contemplating the day of death. Right? Okay, this matters. And with what was the first thing? So it's saying Shema and learning Torah, right? Learning Torah is crucial. And let's go back to these three things, the three things that take us out of the world, the three things that harm us spiritually, that we want to counteract. The three things that take us out of the world are selfishness, jealousy, and pride, right? So those are things that we need to work on, especially in this month of Elul, this month right before Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, especially when we understand God's the closest and has his arms wide open for us. So how do we counteract that? We counteract that. We talked about this before when we talked about Bilam, with a good eye, with the Yetzer Tov, with a good inclination. What is it that we can harness that's within us, that is part of who we are, to counter these forces that are playing basketball with us, as per the previous analogy? Generous eye. Have a good eye. Look at things with a good eye. What the colored glasses that I have on? Do I see things? Do I try to jump to the right conclusions? Give the benefit of the doubt. Find a scenario that paints everything in a good light. Can I try to do that? Obviously, not that we get swindled in the process, but in general, not to jump negativity, to jump with, not to have jealousy, not to have but to have a good eye, to be generous of eye, to be humble. Again, how do we do that? To work on that, like understand that we're really small in the universe, but yet the whole world was created for us, and that paradox. But to work on our humility, to not be prideful and arrogant, and like this is the way I am, and this is what I have to do, and this is what I can do, and to recognize our talents and skills and not get all haughty about them. And then finally, to counteract our selfishness is to have an unassuming soul. I think I have to work on that one, but to be unassuming of soul, to kind of like quiet. So those three things are the Yetzer Tov at work, which can counteract the Yetzer Hara, these the forces that pull us away. So the forces that pull us away are selfishness, jealousy, and pride. And the things that build us up and create the kinds of people that we want to be, that can negate those negative forces, are humility and unassuming soul and generosity of eye, like a good eye. And then the whole thing is subsumed under the category of learning Torah, because learning Torah is connecting to the source of all life, and then that's where we'll like really connect correctly. All right, so let's just recap a little bit. So when you go out to war, we're going out to war. Our souls are coming to the world. We're fighting the battle of life. We're fighting to live our lives in the best possible way, to bring godliness into the world, to be partners with God, to fight the battle against the forces that take us away, the Yetzer Hara, those things that pull us away, all those things that can block us, anger and self-doubt and self-negativity and self-loathing and all of those things that pull us away. We want to counteract those with our Yetzer Tov, with prayer, with Torah learning, with contemplating the day of death, with being humble, with a good eye, and with an unassuming soul. So that's the first part, this battle that we go to. That's the beginning of this week's Parsha. At the end of this week's Parsha, we learn about, destroying Amalek. So I'm going to read you about destroying Amalek. remember what Amalek did to you. We read this right before Purim, actually. So remember what Amalek did to you on the way when you were leaving Egypt. So the Jewish people are coming out of Egypt, and the sea split, and all these miracles happened. Amalek saw all of this happen, and the Jewish people are coming out. That he happened upon you, Amalek happened upon you on the way, and he struck those of you who were hindmost, all the weaklings at your rear, when you were faint and exhausted, and Amalek did not fear God. It shall be when Hashem your God gives you rest from all your enemies all around in the land that Hashem your God gives you as an inheritance to possess it. You shall wipe out the memory of Amalek from under the sun. You shall not forget. Amalek is a philosophy. As much as then he was a nation, in our day it's a philosophy. It's people who are out to destroy the Jewish people. It's people who are out to destroy and put doubt into our minds that God exists, that there's a God in this, there's a one God in the world that is this loving God that runs everything, and the Hashem Echad that we talked about. What Amalek is the force that puts doubt into the situation, that cools off our passion, that takes us away from understanding that there's transcendence in the world. Malek is the force that says everything that you see is what there is. There's nothing other than what is here right now. That there's no God in the world. There's nothing transcendent. When you die, you die. You're done. You're done. That's the force that takes life out of us, the Jewish people. That it's our battle of survival. The battle against Amalek is essentially a battle for the survival, not only of the Jewish people, and what holds us together is Torah and belief in God and our steadfastness and our faithfulness to God through the Torah. So Amalek is the philosophy that tries to undermine that and pull that out, pull the rug out from under us. Right, and we are enjoined to fight that battle. That's not an obligatory battle. That is a mandatory battle. That is a battle that we have to fight. That is not one we get to choose to do. If we don't fight the battle, we're really done for. So when we in the beginning, when we go out to war, we're fighting the internal battle. At the end of the Torah portion, when we go out to war, when we're fighting for our survival. We're fighting for the Jewish people to survive. So what's interesting is if you go back to where this is described in the book of Exodus, it's the same story of when Amalek attacked the Jewish people. And again, to every nation in the world apparently saw this great revelation, saw the sea split, the Red Sea split, right? And the Jewish people come through. Everybody saw that. And everybody was aware that this God of the world was protecting the Jewish people. And Amalek had the audacity maybe the chutzpah or the something to attack these people, the Jewish people. Even when it was so obvious that there's God in the world and that God is protecting these people and bringing them out from one nation, from within another nation. How is it possible that Amalek could do this? He did, because he denied the existence of God. And he kind of allowed that now to be a force in the world. If Amalek can attack the Jewish people, then so can other nations. He sort of, so to speak, cooled off the water. He introduced doubt into the system of the Jews being like this special nation, that the God of the Jews, the God that protects us and helps us, and that we're the firstborn nation, we're the chosen people. We can talk about that, but that we have a special role to play. That we have, so to speak, a nation that's the firstborn nation, bringing godliness and bringing Torah into the world. And what Amalek did is he undermined that. He introduced doubt. He brought down emunah in God, not just amongst the Jewish people, but amongst other nations in the world. And our challenge is to destroy that evil. Right? That's what we're here to do. That Amalek had a huge amount of arrogance, and we talked about that before as to something that we have to combat. We have to combat arrogance, and Amalek saying you don't need God, and Amalek saying there's nothing. It says that we have to destroy the memory of Amalek from under the heaven, meaning that we have to bring heaven back in. Amalek's taking heaven out of the equation. There's nothing up in the heavens. It's all here. And we have to say, no, 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 there is something in the heavens. There is something more than this existence. And that's what we stand for. And it's important for us to fight for that. We have to fight for that. And we have to obliterate, it says we should wipe out, but we should obliterate the memory of Amalek. That's our job, is to obliterate the memory, the force, the philosophy of Amalek. That's what we have to do, like wipe it out, get rid of it. And it's a spiritual battle. Back when we read about the story in the book of Exodus, Amalek is attacking the Jewish people, and the Jewish people start to fight. And Moses goes up onto a hill, onto a mountain, and he stands up with his hands aloft, above him, like up. And when his hands are up, then the Jewish people are victorious and conquering the Amalekites. They're winning. When he got tired and his arms started to get tired and come down, then the tide turned and Amalek was starting to win. So he had to keep his hands up. And there are two people that stand either side of Moshe, and hold his hands up, help him hold his hands up. One is Aaron, his brother, and the other one is Hur, who is the son of his sister Miriam. So he has his brother and his nephew holding his hands up. Again, the idea of family. The idea of us helping each other and being part of a spiritual battle together. The point of holding his hands up, says many of the commentaries, is that when we hold our hands up, we look up and we recognize that at the end of the day, all the power, all the help, everything we need comes from above, comes from up, comes from God. So hold your hands up, look up, cry out, month of Elul, cry out, hold your hands up. Yesterday, I did a little class on Musar, on character development. And the teacher asked us to go into the corner and say a particular saying over and over and over again for 5 minutes. And the saying was choose life in Hebrew and English, but to walk around, stand in one place, sit down, whatever you want, go outside, sing it, say it, whisper it, shout it, whatever you want, but say this choose life over and over again for 5 minutes. So it's a bit odd, you're not used to doing something like that. But it was a very powerful experience. It went by very fast, and it kind of it focused you on this concept, choose life. And I'm thinking, you're holding your hands up. We're holding our hands up because we want life. We want to overcome the Amalekites. We want to overcome the negative forces, the force that wants to undermine us and wants to destroy us, the Jewish people. And at the end of the day, if we don't look up, then we're going to fail. We have to look up. Just like Moses had to hold his hands up and his family helped him and everybody helped him hold his hands up, that's what we have to do. We have to look up and bring God into the equation because he's there waiting for us, and we just employ him and use that energy of godliness to help us achieve. If we're going to achieve, we're going to need the help of God to get there. That's what we need. So here's the hands being held aloft by Moses, being held up by his two brothers. And again, this idea of the family and how we're our family and we're all trying to help each other and work with each other and support each other and hold each other up because we're all in this together. It's very important to be in this together. In this spiritual battle that we're all fighting, we're all in this together. We don't want to doubt ourselves like Amalek brought that in. We're not here to doubt. We have to have the passion. We don't want to be cooled off. We don't want the water to be tepid. We want the water to be fiery. We want to live our lives with a certain amount of energy and fire and passion and emotion and feeling like we're really, this is important work that we're doing. And destroy Amalek. So at the either ends of this week's Torah portion, we have this battle of the soul, of our individual battle that we each one fight, and then at the end of the Parsha, the end of the Torah reading, we have this fight against our enemy that is out to destroy us, all of us, and the Jewish people, and the Jewish nation, and the Jewish religion, and the idea of godliness in the world. So we have to fight that. That we have to obliterate. What's really interesting is this word obliterate. I actually don't know what the time is. I don't know if somebody can somebody just post what time it is, please, or maybe tell me when I have 5 minutes left, because I don't seem to have a watch with me. Can somebody just thumbs up that you're going to do that? The idea of obliterating. So there's another Torah law in this week's Torah portion that speaks about a man who dies, a married man who dies, and he has no children. And the wife is enjoined to marry the dead husband's brother. And the reason given is so that is so that the legacy, so that the name, the family will continue through the brother, so that the memory of the deceased man will not be obliterated. It's the same term, this term of obliteration. So in the context of Amalek, we want to get rid of that. We want to obliterate that. There should be no memory of that. However, in the case of a deceased man who didn't have children, was married, the Torah, God is saying that man somehow has through his brother can have his name, his memory, his gene pool continue on and not be obliterated. So in that case, the injunction is this Levirate marriage, where the widow is to marry the deceased husband's brother and continue the legacy, so that his name is not obliterated. Just want to throw that in there. So anyway, those are a couple of things I wanted to say. The last thing, so I want to go back to the mother bird and the importance of the mother bird, and then so I want to talk about we talked about the mother bird. I want to talk about the wayward son, this rebellious son that we spoke about, and how it never happened, but yet it teaches us about parenting. It teaches us about the bond between the parents and the child, and how much, do we have to have a clear message that we give over to our children? Our children are an extension of us or not? How do we see that? I'm just throwing out questions. But again, rebellious son never happened, yet we learn it because there are lessons to pull out. The voice of the mother, the voice of the father, how they come together, the maternal instinct that we talked about with Chungwe, the mother bird, the Torah commandment to honor our parents. And maybe it doesn't come so easily, but it's mandated that this is what you have to do. And what we're doing, what the Torah is the Torah is our guidebook. It's not just don't do bad things. It's do good things, right? So the Torah's mitzvot aren't just don't do harm, don't be a bad person. The Torah is also telling us to be good people. And one of the ways it tells us to do that in this week's Torah portion is by returning a lost object. There is a mitzvah in the Torah to return a lost object. I don't know if that, I'm so imbued with that, I don't know if that exists outside. Whereas if you found something, the lengths you would go to return an object to the original owner. And we are very, very much aware of this mitzvah, and it's very important to do. And I actually want to bring up a story that happened this summer, where one of the participants on the Israel trip that I was on left her phone in a taxi. And it was a very expensive phone, and it was something that she wanted. I had lots of pictures on it, and obviously, and it was the beginning of the trip, and she wanted to have the phone for the trip, and it was something that she wanted, and something we worked on, something we talked about. But just to cut a very long story short, is that we could not find a way to get this taxi driver and locate this taxi driver. What happened in the end is that the husband of the participant, who lives here in Rhode Island, received a phone call from a man in Massachusetts. The man in Massachusetts, I had to write this down because it's like you wouldn't make this up. His wife's sister's boyfriend's brother found the phone in a taxi in the Dead Sea. I'm going to say that again because it's like so outlandish. This man who lives in Massachusetts, his wife's sister's boyfriend's brother found the phone in a taxi in the Dead Sea. Okay, so like, now what? Now they have this phone and it's locked and it's on airplane mode, and the person who found it spent 5 days, I don't know how much time it took, but somehow she was able to unlock it. And wife's sister's boyfriend's brother, so it was a man that found it. So this person was able to unlock it and able to find the contact and very able to find and contact the husband in Massachusetts. right? So then now this, I guess this person who found the phone, the girlfriend, speaks English, and she lives in a little town outside of Tel Aviv. So we get a phone call that the phone's been found, and it's in this little town in Tel Aviv, but the person who has it doesn't have a car and doesn't really have very much money, and so how are we going to get the phone? And we're about to leave Israel, like 2 days from now we're leaving Israel. Turns out that one of the helpers on our trip, I mentioned the story to him, and he said, oh, my brother's girlfriend lives in that same town. What are the chances? And she goes over to this woman who has the phone, gets the phone, and what are the craziness? And it happens that they're coming to Jerusalem that same day. So she's willing to go get the phone from this young woman and bring it to Jerusalem, and we get it on the last day. But again, like how it all came together, and how this person who found the phone in the taxi in the Dead Sea and took upon themselves to crack it and open it and not keep it and find and return this lost object, it's like Heraclean. It involved God, no question, in all of our minds that God was involved in this. But that she had all these different people at the back of their minds and the front of their minds had the Torah injunction that there is something important about returning a lost object, that's built into our universe, that's a good thing to do and we should do it. It's a mitzvah, it says in the Torah you should do it, and it brings itself out practically in this whole crazy story of how this woman got her phone back because this man's wife's sister's boyfriend's brother found the phone, and then the helper on the trip, his brother's sister, lives in the town. All these people, and everybody had this focus of returning the lost object. So I just think that's an amazing story. Somebody tell me I'm going to have 2 minutes to go, please. It is an amazing story, but it speaks about taking the Torah and making it relevant today. It's relevant today. We're returning lost objects. One other Torah, there's 47 mitzvahs in this week's Torah portion. Another one is when you see your neighbor's donkey, when you see your enemy's donkey under a heavy load, you go over and you help unload the donkey. So we're getting back to being kind to animals, not being cruel to animals. But it says in the Gemara that if you came upon a situation where there were 2 donkeys, one of your friend and one of your enemy, and both of them have a heavy load, whose load do you unload first? So our inclination might be to help our friend first. The Torah says, help your enemy first. Help the person who it's harder for you to help. Why? Because when you help someone, when you include them in your world, they become part of you, and it transforms the person into a friend. So actually the language changes. When you see your enemy's donkey, then you will unload it and he will become your friend. So again, giving, and how giving creates more of you, expands you out, includes this other person. So that's another application. If you're driving by and you see someone you don't really care for and they have a flat tire, you stop and you help them, or you drive right by. The Torah says you stop and you help them, right? If you find a lost object, you have to find a way and try really hard to return it. We don't have, in our world, in Rhode Island, donkeys with heavy loads, but we have other similar kinds of situations, a flat tire or somebody at the side of the road who needs help, etc. These are things that are written into the Torah. They're Torah things that were written thousands of years ago, that were built into the universe, and we're practicing them today. It's bringing us closer to bringing godliness back into the world. So, again, I cannot do justice to this week's Torah portion because there are so many mitzvot to bring out. We talked about going out to war against Amalek, against the forces that pull us and stop our soul being manifest. When you go out to war, when this soul comes into the world and is now fighting the battle, God will help us. God is there, especially in the month of Elul. We can reach out to Him. That the mitzvahs we do are real. They're not just written in the Torah for a long time ago. This week's Torah portion, we talk about putting mezuzahs on the doors. We talk about not being arrogant. I mean, that relates to not having a huge ego, working on ourselves, our relationship with our parents, the relationship that parents have with their children. Shooing away the mother bird will bring us length of years and long life and a good life. and might not be in this world, or might be in the next world, but we're told the reward for honoring your parents, whether it's honoring your parents, your actual parents, or whether it's honoring the maternal instinct by shooing away the mother bird and not taking the mother bird at the same time as her eggs. We talked about the rebellious son, and that this rebellious son never happens, and yet we can pull out of here parenting advice, what kind of voice parents should have when they talk to their children. Should it be a clear one voice? Can it be a little bit more nuanced? What kind of voice is it? What kind of message does each child need from us? What kind of giving does each child need from us? What kind of receiving can they receive, etc., etc.? Huge topic of parenting and parent-child relationships. The idea of the guardrail around arrogance, so we don't become arrogant. The need to work against these forces that pull us away, to be humble, to be low of spirit, and to have a generous and a good eye. And we talked about the fight against Amalek and those forces that want to pull out the rug from under us and to obliterate us as Jewish people. We have to eradicate that. We have to obliterate that. But we don't obliterate the name and the legacy of a deceased man who didn't have children in this world and is married, and his wife is now enjoined to engage in this levirate marriage. There's ways to get out of that, but that's written into the Torah. And the last thing I just throw in here is to remember what happened to Miriam when she spoke about her brother Moses. So back in Exodus, we read about Miriam speaking about her brother to Aaron. Aaron and Miriam were having a conversation about Moses, and in response to what she said, she was afflicted with a physical condition that indicated that she had spoken ill or wrongly about her brother. How she did it out of love, and how she was trying very hard to always have the right intentions, and yet she messed up, and the whole camp waited for her, and she was healed. And so all the more so how we should be careful with our language and what we say and how we say what we say. And so as we wrap up these 47 mitzvahs that are in this Torah portion, and to say there's so many things to learn, there's so much to apply to our everyday lives, the importance of burying our dead. In this week's Torah portion, should bury the dead on the day that we die, should be buried. All these things are written into the Torah, but they're not just for back then, they're for now. They're for how we live our lives now. Let's go back to the beginning where we talked about the soul and how the soul wanted to be born. The soul wants to be in the world because the soul sees that everything in this world has the potential to be elevated, to be used to bring godliness into the world. Even the things that we think are negative, actually, they're positive and they help us. So, so these wars that we fight and the task that we have in life, at the end of the day, we need God's help to help us. And everything that's here can help us win that battle and win out over our enemies and to elevate the world and to make the world a better place. And so in this month of Elul, I pray and I give us a blessing that we're all able to affect some change in ourselves and to identify things that we want to improve and that we want to be better at, and that we are successful in that, so that when we get to Rosh Hashanah, when we get to Yom Kippur, that we're actually the people that we want to be. And like the wayward, rebellious, drunkard son who never is and was never held accountable for things that he would do in the future, he could never be held accountable for things he would do in the future, because our system, God's system, is I judge you today. Who are you today? Let's internalize that message. I might mess up next week, but it's not next week. Right now, it's now. Who am I now? Who am I right this moment, today, right now? Who am I today, and what do I want to be? And I can be that. So let's all try to be that. And I wish you all a good week. And I'm sorry the tape got separated.